Good evening, everyone. I'm going to double down on Amy with notes and going to be a bit unconventional as for those that have been able to glide over the stage so seamlessly with a great story. I'm not going to do this time. I do it most times, but generally I'm talking about subject matter that, I talk about every day. And as Amy mentioned, is that echoing too badly? No. As Amy sort of said, standing up and talking about climate risk reporting legislation will put you all to sleep. So I do have to thank one person in this room, and I wasn't going to mention her, but I'm going to point to you right now, who basically upended my approach to speaking last week and made me spend my entire weekend stewing over what I was going to talk about. So that's why I have notes, and it's been really wonderful tonight to hear about all the different stories, and I guess this is my story. So, very privileged to be here to discuss a topic that I'm very passionate about, how the new climate risk reporting standards, along with the voluntary ESG, environmental, social and governance, if everyone hasn't got that just yet, but could essentially advance the Sustainable Development Goals. I've believed, in part, the problems of equity, inclusion and sustainability lay in our capitalist model of profit at all costs, and if we could affect change within business, we could get halfway there. So Mick, I was really happy to hear you say that earlier on, that with business we can really actually make a real change, and I absolutely believe that. But before I jump in, I just thought I'd give you a bit of a background to me and my journey, because ultimately I get asked all the time about how do you get into sustainability? How did you do what you're doing? And the fact of the matter is it's just been iterative, I guess. I've had a very patchwork career, but I've always actually had a very keen interest in sustainability. I did study economics with a focus on development and Asian economics. I went back to university and ended up doing an MA in Asian societies. I focused on women and did my final thesis on sex economics in Thailand, which is a bit unconventional. I did have high hopes of joining the UN and an international development organisation, but the closest I came to that was being sponsored by the Australian government and becoming one of the early AusAid, Australian Youth Ambassadors for Development. I was posted to the Thai Tax Department, where I had a Director General basically yell at me for a good 6 months in Thai and tell me that I was useless. I'm pretty sure, I think he thought I was a spy. I was the first first foreigner to ever work in that department. And so it was a pretty tough 6-month gig, but I just got used to him yelling at me and I just ignore him, and I wrote my own reference at the end and got him to sign it. Then after that, nothing really happened in terms of my ability. I have really bad language skills. I did spend obviously a long time in Thailand, and I can get by in Thai, but honestly, the UN requires you to be able to speak French, and I do not. I've taken multiple courses, and I could probably last about 20 seconds in a French conversation. I watch Emily in Paris and can't understand anything. So I have been around the world a bit. I focused on my passion of travel and just trying to figure out where I could find passage to jobs and working in interesting places. So I did end up in Denmark and Sweden. I knocked on the door of the Australian government, and weirdly they gave me a job. When they decided to end my contract, I took a side hustle in an Irish pub in Copenhagen and had a ball. I spent 10 years in Singapore in economic advisory for multinational companies doing business in Asia, and have done some time as a dive master in the Cayman Islands, so have a huge investment in not seeing our reefs disappear. My entry into global audit, tax and advisory, that is what RSM does, has found me launching global renewables industry groups, developing energy transition tools, scaling sustainability programs across 167 countries, but it quickly became apparent that sustainability reporting landscape was set to transform business across the world. Something that was fringe was becoming mainstream, and I was keen to be part of the action. In holding global roles, I also co-lead RSM's ESG Asia Pacific Hub, where I get to collaborate with all the countries I used to live, study, work and play in. What's been interesting to me is the speed of uptake in those markets. Markets like China and Vietnam are now moving very quickly, and it's essentially so they can maintain access to markets. I always like to kind of draw the attention to China because there is just so much going on in China, and some crazy statistics that I like to kind of pull out to sort of make people go, ooh, wow, is that, as three I've got here, but China is basically installing the wind and solar equivalent of 5 large nuclear power stations per week. Data is basically showing that China has potentially peaked its emissions, which is absolutely massive for the world, and it should make everyone feel a little bit better. And Chinese EV sales recently exceeded 50% for the first time. So I'm not sure what the EV take-up in WA is, but it is nowhere out there. So since becoming a client-facing sustainability consultant, it hasn't been all roses. I've definitely encountered a range of challenges and experiences that I believe many of you have also faced. Now I'm going to talk about the sustainability consultant over there, where we had a moment of commiseration over a glass of wine, where we were just basically saying how exhausted we were, and I forgot to, And this is kind of to illustrate the point that both of us, we do so many speaking engagements, we do so much education, but we're not normally talking to such a nice audience. We're normally talking to boards and mining companies and people that, just don't believe this stuff is of value. But it's really hard in what we do because we're a new practice. We're only 1 year old at RSM, and trying to build a team of technical people that are multidisciplinary, that don't normally sit in an accounting practice, is really hard, because not only have we been brought in and expected to make the same profits as an audit that's been around for 1 million years, they just don't get it, and it's been really challenging to obviously kind of ideate and create the methodologies, the services and everything that goes around trying to ensure that we can help businesses prepare for the future, and this reporting requirement has been really challenging. So essentially balancing all these demands and developing a business has just been a major challenge. Besides the education efforts, we often encounter scepticism. Some view sustainability efforts as green tape or motherhood statements, dismissing them as woke or irrelevant. Phrases like, we are sustainable, our profits show it, or we do ESG, we have a woman on the board. Or we are a people business, we have no climate risks, are all too common. I could really go on. But other questions like, do you think the legislation will pass? Yes. And what if the next government reverses it? Adds to just the uncertainty in which we have to keep communicating. My sympathies do go out to those who have been at this a lot longer than me. I read a LinkedIn post over the weekend from a sustainability consultant who's basically been knocking on doors since 2000. Really, I just don't know why it's so hard to tell people, this is actually just the right thing to do. So, despite these challenges, it's crucial to celebrate our victories and recognise that our efforts are actually making a difference. So after commiserating with my friend over there on Thursday evening, I did wake up on Friday morning to the news that Parliament had passed the climate-related risk reporting legislation on the last possible day. I was stoked. Because if it had not passed, it means I still have a job. Yes. The issues are, if it hadn't passed, and I'm probably going to jump over my script here, is it means that Australian business and everything that, we are not an island, as much as we like to think we are an island, we're a globally integrated economy. If we don't align to what's happening internationally, we will become irrelevant. And so when I did sit at a board lunch yesterday and the opposition leader to Roger Cook, I asked her specifically, I said, what do you think the climate risk reporting impacts will be on this particular industry that we were sitting around discussing? And she goes, it's going to be a handbrake. And I was just like going, my gosh, I think you need to kind of get out a bit more because we'll have to agree to disagree, because it would be absolutely massive if we don't go through with these changes. So on the same day, on Friday, I also attended the AICD Climate Governance Forum, which was being held in Sydney. Hopefully some others did as well, but Tanya Plibersek and a number of other industry leaders were sitting on there, and it was great to just see the energy and, you know, just the knowledge and that the energy around this, the change and the transformation that's happening in this area is just gathering steam. But one of the speakers was Andrew Stevens from Stocklands, and I keep kind of using this as a soundbite to really give me comfort, and that is, he made the comment that ESG and climate, you know, integrating it into financial reporting had been really, really hard for them, and this is essentially what the ask of these new reporting requirements. But he also said how incredibly fascinating and challenging and rewarding it was, and that as a result of the hard work that they had done, their employees, their customers, their investors are all very happy and all winning and benefiting as a result of the work that they're doing. So they're investing in green steel, they're investing in materials in which they're innovating and really kind of forging a new future ahead for us. So I was really, really happy about that. So currently the sustainability regulatory environment is just exploding, and I might just switch there, but with the money in the markets, they're basically calling out for transparency. Climate change is real. It's having an impact and will have a continuous impact. But these are new instruments that are essentially retooling the way we do business, reshaping our economy and hopefully rewiring the way we value the intangibles in our market. A few to mention, to include with, the one that I'm obviously largely invested in is the climate-related risk reporting. This legislation will require companies to disclose their climate-related risks and impacts, carbon emissions, and if any committed targets, a transition plan that will provide a credible plan on how they will meet those. Companies will need to do climate scenario analysis, a complex analysis of how their business will traverse a range of climate futures. And all this information will have to be audited. So what that means is that these companies will have to ensure that their information is based on reasonable grounds, and that all the information is defendable, and that there'll be the likes of ASIC and ACCC that will be monitoring this reporting, in addition to global investors and anyone that cares. But it will be there for everyone to basically look at, and so there'll be no hiding, and this ability for us to be able to now move forward in an honest and meaningful way will be just that much easier. Another tool that's really is helping to impact, helping us to sort of drive change, and that's the EPA, WA's EPA, and now the New South Wales and Queensland will be following suit, which means that they're incorporating greenhouse gas emissions into project consideration. It means that they need to have a GHG management plan on how they're basically going to reduce their scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions from projects, and have to be consistent with net zero by 2050. Another interesting one that's basically come to pass is the JORC code. If anyone works in mining, this is a really important one. They are now, it's the Joint Ore Reserves Committee, which are now actually integrating ESG into their reporting and transparency when junior miners are getting up. Obviously, the federal government's got Nature Positive and the establishment of the Nature Environmental Protection Australia, which is essentially an ambitious plan to create a new regulator and enforce national environmental standards, prevention of extinctions, and a nature positive and repair approach. This is currently, unfortunately, this week stuck in the Senate and has been pushed back for the second time, but Tanya Plibersek's obviously crossing her fingers and toes because the Nature Positive Summit is not far away. Tanya also announced that she'll be getting the Productivity Commission, is going to be exploring ways in which Australian industries can become more circular. So, in addition, we also have the Nature Finance Council, we have Net Zero Economy Authority, Future Made in Australia, Climate Economy Act, and the development of the Australian Sustainable Finance Taxonomy. So, essentially, the business of sustainability and energy transition is really, really busy. While the list is not exhaustive, it just basically signifies that the instruments necessary for meaningful change are now being put in place. There is certainty, there's certainty being given to business on which the trajectory in which we need to basically build our businesses and retool them and design them is giving us all hope that we might be able to realise a more sustainable future. In terms of the SDGs, I'm just going to touch on 5 of them, but as many of the other speakers have said, listen, the climate-related risk reporting, it's a tool. It's going to hit nearly every one of those SDGs in one way, or either directly or indirectly. Ultimately, because climate, ESG, it's multidimensional, it's interrelated, it's very difficult to really identify actually where things actually land, but the idea is that it does it's cross-cutting. So first up, we've got SDG, decent work and economic growth. So climate risk reporting basically supports, it's all about business resilience. And it's also about trying to ensure that businesses understand what climate risk is to their business and being able to embed the tools in which they're able to assess the risks and opportunities of climate risk. What this means is that we're going to be able to develop new industries that will provide economic growth, it will provide decent work, purposeful work, hopefully. And I loved your talk about what the future of work is because generationally we are changing. Employees want more from their workplaces. They want to come to work environments and do things with purpose. Sustainable cities and communities. With enhanced climate risk reporting, companies involved in infrastructure and urban development will need to consider and disclose the climate impacts of their projects. This can lead to more sustainable planning and development practices that prioritise climate resilience and contributing to the creation of sustainable cities and communities. I'm not sure, I learnt today that Perth has the least tree canopy capital city in all the world. And that's just phenomenal. So I understand there's a greening of Perth that's happening, and we just need to start looking at how we work within our cities to ensure that it's built into what we're doing, because it's for well-being purposes, for the environment, for cooling purposes. We've just got heat sinks all around Perth, so it's really important that we lean into this sustainable cities opportunities. Responsible consumption and production. The public disclosure of ESG and climate risk material topics will see competition and reputation-related drivers transform the supply chain and operational sustainability practices. The focus on emissions in the value chain, any Scope 3 emission reduction targets, supply chain due diligence will increase. This will likely lead to reducing waste, improving resource efficiency, and adopting environmentally friendly technologies. Number 4, peace, justice, and strong institutions. I think this is the one that they'll probably hit on directly at the first instance, because this is all about increased transparency and holding businesses accountable for their environmental impact and their decision-making processes. By requiring companies to disclose risk, governance and strategy, companies will invest in more robust governance and institutional accountability, which aligns to the goal of promoting transparent and accountable institutions. The main one, this SDG we hoped the climate risk reporting will have the most impact on. By mandating the disclosure of climate-related risks and opportunities, organisations will have to disclose and demonstrate their ability to traverse physical and transitional risks, provide credible transition plans that will push companies to develop strategies to mitigate their environmental impact and adapt to climate change. So balancing economic growth and environmental sustainability will be like walking a tightrope. It necessitates coordinated efforts from governments, businesses, consumers, many whom have different agendas, priorities and values. As I was saying, I met with Libby Metam the other day and had another discussion with another gentleman today. Again, just this misunderstanding or the pathway. How do we get to net zero? What's the energy mix? Can we use nuclear? Is that a viable option? Obviously, there's just this kind of misunderstanding of how we're going to get there and how hard it is. But it demonstrates that coming together and navigating what the future looks like will be hard work. Convincing people to change will be hard. Navigating the misinformation will be hard. But it's the job and the opportunity before us. We are at a tipping point in time where we need an all-hands approach, a collective, innovative approach to reshape our unsustainable consumption and production habits. We are living a champagne life on a beer budget. Thank you for laughing. Other people don't laugh at that one. Typically, my own company didn't laugh at that one. So anyway, they just looked at me and went, "What?" So I think we do actually have a chance, and we also have the obligation for our future generations. I have 2 children, to create purposeful work and a society that values connectedness, family, nature, and time. So another major event that's also currently got my attention, and I actually promised myself that I would just not tune in, just for my own mental health, just absolutely tune out, and that's obviously the American election. But, you know, the Democratic National Convention was basically held over the weekend, and essentially I was struck by those parallels between the fight for what is right in the US and the fight that we have, again, in progressing sustainability. Climate, culture and values are basically being contested in ways that can sometimes feel like they are being weaponised. 3 women had some powerful messages, which I think we can all basically take hold of here as well. So Michelle Obama entered the stage and started off with saying, "Something magical is in the air. Hope is making a comeback." I'm not Michelle Obama, but this is a very nice vibey room and a lot different to the rooms that I normally are in, so I'm very happy to be here for that. And Oprah Winfrey spoke about the need for adult conversations and the need for being united around our highest aspirations. Let us choose the sweet promise of tomorrow over the bitter return of yesterday. Choose common sense over nonsense. And Kamala said, "We're not going back. We're charting a new way forward. This is personal for me." I know this journey is deeply personal to many of you here, as it is for me. The fight for sustainability and climate action is not just a professional endeavour, it is a commitment to values and making a lasting impact. Despite the obstacles and the scepticism, we must continue to push forward, celebrate our achievements and remain steadfast in our pursuit of a better, more sustainable future. Thank you.